Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons and love are told. Please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this. I grew up in a modest suburban home just outside of Austin, Texas, where everything looked perfectly ordinary from the outside. To anyone walking past our front yard with its trimmed hedges and warm porch light, we seemed like a happy, balanced family. But inside those walls, the story was anything but balanced. From as far back as I can remember, my parents, especially my father, placed my younger brother Adrian on a pedestal so high it was almost untouchable. And no matter how hard I tried, I never seemed to measure up. When I was in elementary school, I worked tirelessly to bring home the best grades. I remember staying up late under the dim desk lamp, scribbling equations into my notebook while my eyes stung from exhaustion. The next day, I would proudly show my A+ report card, hoping for even a flicker of excitement. My mother would smile politely, but my father would quickly turn the conversation toward Adrian's soccer practice or how many goals he had scored in his last match. I could feel my achievements fading into the background, like whispers drowned out by the loud applause he always received. That was my life. I was invisible in my own home. I was the daughter who got things done quietly, without complaint, without acknowledgement. Adrian, on the other hand, was the golden boy. Even when he brought home mediocre grades, my father would pat him on the back as if he had conquered the world. He's destined for greatness, my dad would say, while I sat silently, my throat burning with the words I never spoke. By the time I reached high school, the difference had become glaring. I graduated valedictorian, standing proudly on that stage with my cap and gown, scanning the crowd for my family's faces. My father clapped, sure, but it was subdued, almost mechanical. Later that evening at home, when I hoped we might celebrate, my father redirected everyone's attention to Adrian's upcoming tryout for a regional soccer league. My accomplishment, something I had fought tooth and nail to achieve, was overshadowed in an instant by the possibility that Adrian might get picked for a sports team. I thought maybe college would change things. I worked 2 part-time jobs to afford what my parents wouldn't cover. I studied engineering, then specialized in computer science, building projects late into the night, sometimes crying silently into my laptop when the code wouldn't run. When I graduated top of my class, again I hoped just once that my family would finally see me. At the ceremony, I spotted them in the crowd. My mother waved warmly, but my father kept his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Later, over dinner, he brought up Adrian's girlfriend and how she had such a bright future ahead of her. I stared at him, wondering if he even remembered why we were there. The cracks widened over the years. While Adrian drifted between odd jobs, abandoning one pursuit after another, I pushed forward in the tech world. I started at a small firm, proved myself by leading challenging projects, and was quickly promoted. Eventually, I founded my own company, a startup that grew faster than I ever imagined. I poured my heart into it, not for my family's approval anymore, but because somewhere deep down, I needed to prove to myself that I mattered. But no matter how high I climbed, I could not escape the shadow of Adrian in my father's eyes. That became crystal clear one December evening. I had been looking forward to Christmas, not because I loved the holidays but because I secretly hoped it would be a chance to reconnect. I thought maybe if I offered to host the family dinner things might feel different. But when I called my father, his words cut sharper than ice. "Clara," he said, his tone cold and clipped, "it would be better if you didn't come this year." I froze. "What? Why?" "Your brother is bringing someone special," he explained. "We don't want you stealing his thunder with, well, everything you've got going on. Let him have this." I remember standing there in my office, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city I had helped shape through my company's innovations. My chest tightened as I pressed the phone to my ear, waiting for him to take it back, to realize how cruel he sounded. But the silence stretched. I finally whispered, "You're banning me from Christmas? Because I'm successful?" "It's not like that," he replied hastily. "You've always been too much. Just give Adrian this moment, too much." That phrase echoed in my mind like a hammer striking an anvil. I hung up before he could say anything else, and for the first time in years, I cried openly. Not the quiet, hidden tears I used to let fall in my dorm room or behind my laptop, but gut-wrenching sobs that shook my body. I realized then that no matter what I did, my father would never see me. My family would never embrace me for who I was. That Christmas, while they laughed around a tree I wasn't welcome near, I sat alone in my penthouse apartment. The city lights sparkled below like fallen stars, but I felt no joy. I ordered Chinese takeout, curled up on the couch, and let the bitter taste of exclusion settle into my soul. It wasn't just about the holiday, it was the years of favoritism, the years of silence, the years of being overlooked. It all came to a breaking point that night, but here's the thing about pain. It either breaks you or it builds you. And that night, something inside me shifted. I realized I would never again beg for a seat at their table. I would build my own table, even if I sat at it alone. That decision shaped everything that came next. I stopped calling as often, stopped sharing updates about my life. When they did reach out, I kept my answers short. If they couldn't celebrate me when I was breaking my back to achieve my dreams, then they didn't deserve access to those dreams once they became reality. Still, there was a part of me that couldn't shake the wound. Family rejection cuts deeper than any professional failure ever could. Even as my company scaled into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, even as investors lined up to back me, even as awards and interviews poured in, I carried that Christmas like a scar across my heart. I didn't know it then, but fate had a cruel sense of irony in store for me. Because just when I had settled into my independence, when I thought I had built enough walls to keep the pain out, Adrian's world was about to collide with mine in a way I could never have predicted. The morning I walked into the conference room and saw Adrian's name on the interview schedule, my stomach dropped like a stone into dark water. I had glanced through the candidate list the night before but hadn't connected the dots. Now, staring at the crisp sheet of paper, my brother's name was printed neatly beneath Senior Project Manager Candidate. For a moment I thought it had to be some bizarre coincidence for someone else with the same name. But no, it was him, my brother, the golden child who had been shielded from responsibility all his life, the same brother whose special moment I had been asked to step aside for at Christmas. And now he was here, knocking at the door of the empire I had built with my own hands. I took a breath, steadying myself before addressing my assistant. "Make sure I'm not the one conducting his interview," I instructed firmly. My voice came out colder than I intended, but it was necessary. No one could accuse me of favoritism or worse, of bias against him. If Adrian was going to step foot into my company, he would earn his place like everyone else or not at all. That day, I excused myself from the interview panel and instead watched discreetly from the observation room where one-way glass panel allowed me to see inside without being seen. Adrian walked in dressed in an ill-fitting suit that looked borrowed. His tie was crooked, and his face carried the familiar easy smile my parents had adored for years. But I noticed something else too, nervousness flickering behind his eyes. He sat down across from the interviewers, his hands fidgeting with the edge of the portfolio he carried. The questions began, straightforward at first. "Tell us about your most recent role." Adrian cleared his throat. "Well, I've tried a few different paths. I worked briefly in marketing, then sales, then managed a small team at a logistics company." His voice trailed off as he struggled to package his meandering experiences into something that sounded coherent. My chest tightened as I listened. He wasn't unskilled, but his story lacked depth, commitment, and direction. At 1 of the interviewers asked, "What's the biggest professional accomplishment you're most proud of?" There was a long pause. Adrian's jaw clenched, and for a split second, the mask of confidence slipped. Finally, he said, "Honestly, I haven't really found my big win yet." The room went still. I pressed my palm to the cool glass, my heart conflicted. For years, I had been cast as the shadow to Adrian's light, yet here he was, exposed, vulnerable, uncertain. A pang of pity caught me off guard. I realized in that moment that being the golden child had been its own prison. My parents' endless praise had shielded him from the accountability he needed, leaving him drifting in a sea of unfinished attempts. When the interview ended, Adrian left the room with his shoulders hunched. He didn't know I was watching, and part of me was grateful for that. After the panel's deliberation, the decision was unanimous. He didn't have the qualifications for the senior role. The rejection email would go out the next day. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Clara, your brother said he applied at your company. Can you help him get in? It would mean the world to us. I stared at the screen, my pulse quickening with anger. Help him get in. As if all the sweat, sleepless nights, and sacrifices I had made could be undone with a single favor, just because Adrian wanted a shortcut. I didn't respond. Hours later, my father called, his voice booming with that same commanding tone that had ruled my childhood. Clara, you know what to do, he said bluntly. Your brother deserves a chance. Make it happen. I closed my eyes, gripping the phone tightly. Dad, he didn't earn it. He's not qualified for that role. I can't jeopardize my company for family politics. There was a heavy silence before he barked, You've always been selfish. Do this for the family for once. His words sliced through me. Selfish. That was the label he'd always pinned on me whenever I dared to assert myself. I swallowed hard, refusing to let the tears form. No, Dad, I won't. I ended the call and sat in my office long after midnight, the city lights flickering beyond the glass walls. The next week, Adrian showed up at my office unannounced. He walked in with a tight smile, carrying a paper cup of coffee as though this were some casual visit between siblings. Hey, Clara, he said softly, can we talk? I gestured for him to sit. He looked around at the polished shelves, the awards, the sleek furniture, and let out a low whistle. You've done well for yourself. The bitterness in his voice wasn't lost on me. He shifted in his chair, then leaned forward. I know I didn't do great in the interview. I could feel it. But I really need this job. I need a fresh start. I folded my hands on the desk, choosing my words carefully. Adrian, I respect that you're looking for stability, but the senior position isn't right for you. It requires a track record you don't have. But there might be an entry-level role where you could prove yourself. If you're willing to work your way up like everyone else, I'll personally make sure you get considered fairly. He looked stunned, then his expression hardened. An entry-level role? You want me to start at the bottom while you sit here at the top? Yes, I replied simply, because that's how I got here. No shortcuts. The silence between us was thick, broken only when he muttered, You sound just like Dad, always reminding me I'm not good enough. His words landed like a punch. But this time I didn't flinch. No, Adrian, Dad told me I was never good enough. I'm telling you that you are, but only if you stop running from the work. He left without taking the offer. And in that moment, I knew the divide in our family was about to widen even further. A few days later, another family dinner invitation appeared in our group chat. This time, instead of ignoring me, my father called outright. If you're coming, you need to bring something meaningful, he said. Adrian's struggling. We expect you to help. I almost laughed at the audacity. So now my presence is allowed as long as I bring my wallet? His silence confirmed everything I already knew. To them, my worth was only as good as the support I could offer to the golden child. That realization hurt, but it also gave me clarity. If they wanted my help, it would come at a cost not of money, but of truth. That night, I drafted an email to the family. I told them that I was willing to meet, but only under one condition. We would attend therapy together. Not once, not twice, but a commitment of 6 months of weekly sessions. If they wanted my support, they would need to confront the years of favoritism, neglect, and silence. When I hit send, my heart pounded in my chest. It was the boldest line I had ever drawn with them. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of their rejection. Because I had finally realized my silence, my boundaries, and my self-respect were more powerful than any seat at their Christmas table. When I pressed send on that email demanding therapy, I honestly didn't expect my family to agree. For years, they had brushed away my feelings as if they were inconvenient dust to be swept under a rug. Part of me thought they would roll their eyes, delete the message, and move on without me, the way they had done countless times before. But the next morning, my mother called, her voice trembling with something I hadn't heard in years. Fear, Clara, she whispered, almost as though she was afraid of being overheard. I think we should try this therapy. Your father's angry, of course, but I know we've hurt you. I don't want to lose you forever. Those words cracked something inside me. For so long, I had believed I was invisible to her. And here she was, admitting, in her own fragile way, that she knew the damage had been done. After a long pause, I said softly, "It's the only way." Forward, 2 weeks later, we sat in a small circle of chairs inside a warmly lit therapist's office. The air was thick with unspoken tension. My father sat with his arms folded tightly across his chest, his jaw set in stone. My mother twisted her wedding ring nervously. Adrian slouched in his chair, avoiding my eyes. I sat upright, my heart pounding, reminding myself that this was the boundary I had chosen. The therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Morales, invited us to speak openly. I started first. My voice shook, but I let the words pour out like water that had been dammed for too long. I grew up feeling invisible. No matter how hard I worked, no matter what I achieved, it was never enough. Adrian was always the star. And when I built a life for myself, you punished me for it instead of celebrating me. You banned me from Christmas. Do you know what that felt like? The room was silent. My father's eyes flicked to the floor. My mother's lips trembled. Adrian shifted uncomfortably. Finally, Adrian spoke. "I didn't know, Clara. I thought you didn't care about the attention because you always seemed so strong. I never realized how much it hurt you." His words stunned me. For years I had painted him as the enemy, the golden boy who willingly took everything handed to him while I starved for scraps of recognition. But hearing his voice break with guilt, I realized he too had been shaped by the dysfunction. He had been trapped under the weight of impossible expectations. Dr. Morales turned to my father. "And what about you, Mr. Hayes? How do you respond to what Clara has shared?" My father cleared his throat, his voice gruff. "I just wanted the best for both my kids. Adrian, he needed encouragement. Clara never needed me. She was always so capable, so independent." My blood boiled. "I needed you more than anyone. Dad, do you have any idea how hard it was to keep working to jobs in college while you never once asked if I was okay? You assumed I didn't need you, but I did. I was just too scared to ask." Tears welled in my mother's eyes as she whispered, "We failed you, Clara. We didn't realize." For months, the sessions peeled back layers of pain none of us had dared to touch. My father confessed he had grown up with a father who never praised him, and in overcompensating for Adrian, he had erased me. Adrian admitted he felt crushed under the pedestal, suffocated by the pressure to be special when he knew deep down he hadn't earned it. My mother revealed that she had seen the imbalance but had been too afraid to speak against my father. It wasn't a fairy tale transformation. Therapy was messy. There were shouting matches, tears, slammed doors. There were nights I left the office trembling, unsure if any of it would ever make a difference. But slowly, painfully, something began to shift. For the first time, my family began to see me as not just the successful CEO, but the little girl who had once sat alone at the kitchen table hoping for her father's approval. 6 months later, the change was undeniable. My father still struggled with pride, but he began making small gestures that once seemed impossible, calling to ask about my day, showing up to a company event to watch me speak, even telling me he was proud of me. Adrian took a lower level role at another firm and, for the first time, stuck with it. He called me one evening just to say, "Thanks for pushing me to face reality. I set boundaries too." I no longer bent over backward for their approval. I visited for family dinners only when I chose to. I spoke up when I felt overlooked. And most importantly, I stopped needing them to validate me. I realized my worth had never been theirs to give, it was mine all along. The Christmas after our 6 months of therapy was different. My father invited me himself, his voice softer than I remembered. When I arrived, the tree sparkled with warm lights, and for the first time in years, there was no tension in the air. Adrian greeted me with a genuine smile, not the smug grin of the golden child, but the look of a brother finally ready to stand beside me rather than above me. As we exchanged gifts, my father raised a glass. "To Clara," he said, his eyes glistening, "for teaching us how to see what we had been blind to." Tears pricked my eyes, but they weren't bitter this time. They were healing. I realized then that reconciliation wasn't about pretending the past hadn't happened. It was about confronting it, breaking it open, and building something new from the ruins. It was about boundaries, about courage, about refusing to accept silence as my role in the family. And as I sat by that fire, surrounded by people who were still imperfect but finally trying, I felt something I hadn't in years, a sense of belonging. Not because they finally celebrated me, but because I had learned to celebrate myself. Moral lesson: family may fail us in the deepest ways, but healing begins when we stop begging for recognition and start honoring ourselves. Boundaries are not walls to shut love out. They are doors that let only healthy love in. Forgiveness is not forgetting the pain but choosing to grow beyond it. In the end, true worth is not handed down by family approval. It blooms when we water it ourselves and when we allow ourselves to be seen for who we are, even if it means building a new kind of family along the way. So friends, thank you for listening to my story. If this touched your heart, please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more stories filled with revenge, healing, and love. And don't forget to leave a comment about what lesson you've taken from my journey. I'd love to hear your perspective.